We also ask that you mute yourselves if you are not speaking. Thank you all for attending today's session. My name is Jasmine Shoemaker, and I, along with my colleagues, Joe Lee and Lorraine Ojo Ohakwari, founded the Symposium series, AI, Privacy, and Ethics, Oh My, unpacking the questions surrounding artificial intelligence and higher education. The symposium's inspiration comes from the ever-changing landscape of AI and the need to know information for students regarding higher education. The symposium supports the university's vision of supporting excellence in higher education by connecting innovative teaching, learning, and research. We were intentional with the selection of our speakers, remaining mindful to include librarians, teaching faculty, and students from diverse backgrounds. Our series would not be possible without the contributions of the following centers, departments, and organizations: the Library Freedom Project, UMBC Center for Social Science Scholarship, the Department of Information Systems, and the Department of Computer Science and Electrical Engineering. Today we welcome Dr. Karen Chen, our third speaker of the series. Dr. Chen explores questions on how to use data-driven technology to help people learn more efficiently, particularly in areas that require complex skills such as problem solving and living in a productive, fulfilling life. She leads the CASLIT system, the DARPA AI Tools for Adult Learning 2023 award-winning team, which aims to develop practice tools for data science problem solving at scale. She holds a PhD in information systems from Carnegie Mellon University and has always been a lifelong learner. On her bucket list is learning to mix humor and laughter elegantly with teaching. Dr. Chen's presentation today is titled The GPT Dilemma, Navigating the Pros, Cons, and the Impacts on Learning. And with that, I'll turn it over to our speaker.
Thank you, Jasmine, and thank you for the effort to organize a lot of work behind the scene. And I was telling a bit anecdote that yesterday my son, and I don't know, yeah, he get this message from the LinkedIn that he know that, hey mom, you give me a talk tomorrow. I really never talk about the talk to my son, and then you can see how the message, how far the message go and to a high school student. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. And I when I present it, I cannot see your chat. So just me and a colleague, and would you able to help me to remind me any burning questions? I would love to answer along the way, and otherwise I save to the later. Okay. So the title of the talk is the GPT Dilemma: Pro and Con Impact on Learning, and I have a disclaimer that I only look at it from the data science education perspective. I'm part of a faculty learning community on AI in education, and I have tell you how amazing that our colleagues from different departments, they're experimenting with GPT, and I have a different view perspective of GPT in their classroom, and so this is very restricted to my own view in data science education. So this is me. I lead a lab for informatics for human flourishing, and just in curious, what is this? It is really the concept of how you not only survive but also thrive. So I highlighted the aspect is on the right-hand side are the 5 domains of human flourishing, and on the left-hand side are the possible pathways. The box I highlight are those actually I have an active research project on as a family and a work and education, a big chunk of my time, and healthcare as well. So this talk is related to my research and also my practice of teaching data science, teaching data science at a different level. I teach very introductory level data science class and the advanced undergraduate and also graduate level data science class. So this is the agenda for today. I'm going to start to talk about, answer the question, whether data science, GPT as a data scientist, are we there yet? And then I'm going to put that into context to think about how we can rethink data science education. Then I'm going to share you the student perspective after they're using GPT in these 2 data science courses in fall 2024. One is the undergraduate, sorry, 2023. And one is undergrad data science class, another is the graduate level class. And toward the end, I'm not going to spend a lot of time to that. I'm not an expert on that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my intuition, how to detect GPT generated work and whether it work at all. And I leave a lot of time for open discussion. So let's talk about whether GPT is good enough as a data scientist, and if it is, to what extent. Before we get on to this topic, let's just on the same page. I understand that not all of them you actually do data science, just have an idea what is data science about. So right now I'm teaching IS 296 is an introductory foundation for data science class, and I ask the question of what do you think about it is data science? So this is what to get from the cloud, what a cloud is. Well, of course, it's the data, and then it's about the science, right? And about a meaningful insights, about a programming database, a lot of different things, right? And sorry, just a plug in case you are a student, you haven't never taken a data science class, or you actually in your sphere of influence, you know the student they actually consider the class. This is a very interesting class. I took it. I teach for a couple years already, and it's pretty fun to teach. And the reason is that the students don't have any programming experience coming to the class. It's really introductory and adapted from UC Berkeley Data 8, and using Python, a programming language, to illustrate a lot of very important data science concepts. And now it's approved our GEP Science No Lab options, and now begin to offer every semester, and then more and more session will be offered. So we're very welcome student from all major. It's really a data science for all kind of class. So a little bit more formal definition about data science is to look at the data flow, the workflow, because in order to understand how GPT can help, we usually have to look at how GPT can do for each of the type of work. So we collect the data. Usually we don't have to deal with that in our class. Data is already been collected, and you clean the data. Data usually is very messy, and then you do data exploration, and sometimes you have to build a model and deploy the model in the real world. And if you do subset of a job, and then you usually encounter different kind of name, like data engineering, mostly focused on the back end database related work, and the data analyst mostly focus up to the point of do data exploratory data analysis. And then if you end up doing a building model, then it's called a machine learning engineer, and data scientist job can be everywhere. And that's why data science is called a unicorn. So in terms of a discipline, data science is a combination of the math and stats knowledge, and also the programming, and very importantly that we using the method to solve the problem. So oftentimes you need to collaborate with domain expert. And in my case, I work with healthcare, and then I will collaborate with the doctors and the nurses in that fields. So I want to also mention that other than this hard technical skill, these are the softer skill. I really don't want to call it softer skill. It's not really soft, and it's actually a very important skill complement to the technical content knowledge that usually we talk about. Those ethical consideration, and you want to do the things that actually benefit the humanity, and about the communication. How do you communicate your data to the stakeholder? That's super, super important. And the collaborative. More and more you see students that work with the team. They have a different the complementary skill, and especially you need to know how to talk to a domain expert, and critical thinking and creativity as well. And keep this in mind when we think about the GPT's impact and how they can help or support or not yet in some cases. And just to recap, I know you have a different theory to talk about a GPT, and just to recap one page and see what is a GPT is. So GPT is a kind of a large language model called LAM, also called a generated AI, this particular kind of AI. And GPT, the acronym for generated pre-trained transformer. This is the kind of model, and predict the next token, allow you to have a very amazing kind of knowledge representation, and do the things that call it emerging intelligence. And somebody also called, and it's pretty interesting, they call it GPT is a general purpose technology. It's like a Google search engine that very different from the AI predate. Previously, that the AI usually is special purpose for this for vision or for language, spoken language, and it's a very specialized kind of AI. But GPT is a general purpose technology. Has a very wide potential for wide adoption. That's the thing that we have to pay attention to. And then also that's very interesting, this emerging human-like superhuman capability. I have to qualify that it's not a, we don't know, just somebody claimed that it has superhuman. And we all know that it has a super linguistic competency, can write something much, much better than for people like me as an English as a second language learner people. And also have good potential as an assistant partner for writing, summarization, translation, programming, data analysis, and we'll see how it goes, and then reasoning, argumentation. And of course, you're aware that weakness is hallucination and misinformation bias, and that's why it's very important to be aware of the limitation for responsible usage. So in the next exercise, I'm going to show you how we assess GPT's competency in data science task. So I'm going to show you different way to assess the competency, and ideally you have a large scale study that actually go to the field, like the data scientist in the real world, and how they use GPT to solve the problem. So far, to my knowledge, I haven't seen this study, so I'm going to show you some study that as a proxy to that kind of assessment. So there's several different kind of study, and the first type is I call it assessment on related skills. So as I mentioned, that there's a bunch of different skills that relate to data science, and the question is how GPT is doing along this line of this component skill. And the second type is about called a case study, is on a given task. So this is like a little bit anecdotal kind of evidence. It's not a large scale. And then there's a work on academic task. They asked GPT to do some homework assignment and that kind of stuff. And this is, again, I have to say that is not exactly the same thing happening in the real world. It is a proxy, it might not be truly reflect what's happening in data science world. So when you see the numbers, like, oh, just keep this in mind. And then lastly, there's some qualitative data from interviewed people in the field, do not necessarily when they're doing a task is a kind of reflective question that whether how you think GPT to help you work or not, and in different kind of domain. So that's the plan. So just to go through quickly, and then this is released last year about this time, and then show GPT's performance on a bunch of tests. So I want to highlight that AP Stats is probably one of the most relevant subjects for data science, and GPT achieved 80% for the AP exam. And then this is a study running on the programming task, and so part of a data science job is really to write a program. So the people they use GPT and people that don't use GPT, and how much time they complete the task. So this is the measure of productivity, and then show the 50% increase of productivity using AI Copilot. This is not even a current version of GPT, it's a bit slightly older version of GPT. And in a paper of emergence of intelligence, spark of AGI, and this is a hypothetical question, and then this is actually a bit too hypothetical. I would take a grand thought. Basically, that you have to give it a prompt that to ask GPT generate a plot and then simulate the data and show some scatter plots and that kind of stuff. This is an interesting study. It's run with some consultant from a company, I believe it's a BCG, and they look at the quality of the work compared with the consultant. They did not use AI GPT. This is the blue tag, and those people they use AI. And just to look at these two groups. And then you can see that the people they use AI, they actually significantly improve the quality as a consultant. And a very interesting aspect of the study, they also break down the people they use AI into those people they actually get some additional training using AI. This is the red part. And I show this part to my student, and they're actually very interestingly pointing out the very interesting phenomenon here. If you look at the left-hand side here, these are the people they actually got additional training as opposed to like an expert in use GPT. They end up with pretty low quality. And so, wow, what's happening? Was one of the hypotheses I have is that they call like a falling asleep at the steering wheel, and then you have an autonomous driver, and then you just it's so much rely on their work, and then you just GPT can hallucinate, and then you just take it as granted. You end up with it have a lower quality work. Yeah, so kind of interesting study. So and then we have a case study of using GPT to use the task. This is the case study. This is just a one data set to run through the whole pipeline, from clean the data, do data exploration, make some questions. And now sure, this part is not the GPT work, it's the human work. And then build a model, do some model interpretation, and present the data. So this is some example from this paper, and I give some prompt, say, can you do some data exploration? And the data, the GPT was able to graph out some data, and it's kind of like data exploration, the kind of task. And he was able to build a model, compare the performance, and also do some parameter tuning, like machine learning engineering kind of job, and also try to see whether you can interpret the model. In this case, it is a feature importance in random forest and predicted heart disease. So that's just one case study. In the same paper, they also do some GPT evaluation for academic task. In this case, they use GPT and put it into a, I believe it's a code, it's a called a plugin. It's the GPT-4 version of the advanced version. You have to pay to get the plugin, and then they run through the questions in one of the textbook, the Introduction to Statistical Thinking. Altogether is 116, and then 104 you were able to get it correct. So, and 90%, like a low A kind of performance, right? And they noticed that 8 of them, they have a figure. Oh, sorry, 4 of them they have a figure, and then they couldn't figure out. And 8 of them, they just don't get it. Yeah. And then we also do some our own study with GPT to try to do some evaluation on the data science problem solving task. And this is related to the DARPA challenge, where I try to get through, and amazing work done by Marion from our IS department, a PhD student, co-advised by myself and Dr. Pan. So we try. What did we try to do? Give through. We have like a case study, kind of case. We call it caselet, and have a problem, and it's a bit more complicated than the stats questions. Altogether, I had 33 questions. And the left-hand side, we experiment different kind of version of the GPT, and obviously you can see that GPT-4 has a lot of more better performance. And this is the overall performance. 70% of time he can get it all complete correct. And 20% of the time they have partially correct, and then a very small percentage time they get totally wrong. And we also break down into several different kind of knowledge components that relate to the pipeline, the different part of the data science work, and how well the GPT can do the work. If you look at the GPT's columns, popular formulation, data understanding, model configuration, do a pretty good job, and relatively the other part is model diagnosis and experiment design, and data processing, and less experienced. And then keep in mind that the sample size is pretty small in this case, so we're actually writing proposal, try to get the sample size bigger. So this is another study run by the people from Harvard, and they run through GPT, run through the data visualization assignment to GPT, and ask to do the data cleaning, exploration, and read interactive with visualization and present explain insights. That's pretty interesting. And they actually, different from the previous study, they actually use the image, upload the image to GPT and ask GPT to interpret data from the image. That's pretty amazing. And they noticed that they can score 80% on quiz and homework. And interestingly, they also do another layer of study. They ask a teaching fellow to distinguish between GPT and human generated work, and they have achieved 70% accuracy. So this is a question of whether we can detect reliably the GPT generated work or not. And they also demonstrate a lot of other tasks that GPT can do. Yeah. Lastly, I want to show you an interview study with 18 professional data analysts. They are asked the question, why or why not you're going to use AI as a collaborator for data storytelling. So there's a particular focus on data storytelling. This is about how you communicating this data. And this is actually not easy task, even so far for GPT, because it requires a lot of human context in order to do a good job. So on the left side of the green part is the reason that I want to collaborate with AI. That including the elimination of a repetitive task and a potential high capability than human in terms of the knowledge coverage and accurate and faster computation. And the low cost of the AI, everybody know that. And tireless AI collaborator, they will not, it's 24 hours, 7 days, and never sleep. But I also decided the reason that we didn't want to collaborate with AI. And some of the reason is that the AI is still not very easy to work with, and I also will show you later on when you see the students struggle to extend using GPT to solve that problem. And also there are other factors that so far, even now, the AGI is still not there yet. Have issue of the creativity, a lack of a context understanding, the data background, and authors or audience preference. It's kind of hard to bring this information to picture. Inconvenience communication with AI and overhead apply AI. These are like a technical detail, I would say, and the ethical concern as well. Yeah, outdated data, domain dogmas, training data. Yeah, so that's the perspective, and put everything together into a context that zoom out a little bit, and then talk about the future of work in the area of GPT. So this is study last year in August by IBM. They put together two studies from 3,000 C-level executives and also 21,000 workers in 22 countries. And they have come to the conclusion that the 40% of workers need to reskill in the next 3 years due to AI. And the tagline is that AI will not replace people, but people who use AI will replace people who don't. So in terms of data science, and let me show you some results. And this is my own perception what AI can do for data science and what it cannot do. So AI can perform tasks that is very well specified or routine. And you can understand how the AI was trained on this historical data. And if your task is being there, people do it again and again, you likely find a code that can do it. And then they can do it very well. And also have a potential as a many data related tasks, as you can see, but not all the pipeline. And they remind us that it is a shifting job requirement towards problem solving in novel and complex context. And you're not likely to use AI to solve this complex problem and novel problem that you cannot find the data points there, right? And also the planning skill become more and more important. How do you decompose a big problem, the complex problem into a sub problem, and to the point that the GPT can also do it very quick, mostly accurate for you. And then there's also a new skill. How do you facilitate? How do you can do a good job to do what's called like a human AI collaboration? And how do you engage the critical and productive engagement with AI? And very important, how do you put the ethics and the social responsibility into picture? And with AI augmentation, you can do more and more tasks. Doesn't mean that you have to do that, right? You have to think twice about how to harness the power of AI in an ethical way. So as an educator, I have a question how we can proactively prepare students for the change. So, and we have about 20 minutes also. I want to talk about my thinking about how we should rethink data science education. So there's a paper that's coming out by a group of people. They start to think about it. I think it makes sense. And they believe that there's a demand shift in both content, what we teach, and the method, how we teach. And they envision that data scientists will shift from the role from a software engineering to a product manager, and then shift the focus to as a more like a strategic planning, coordinating resources, and oversee product lifecycle rather than a standard data analysis pipeline. And also the emphasis of creativity, critical thinking, and then large language model guided programming and interdisciplinary knowledge. But they discourage the premature introduction while students still developing this foundational skill. And the bottom line for me is how do we discourage something called a circumvent learning and prevent students to when they at the time should develop foundation skill, we shouldn't use GPT. And they usually have to decide when it can be outsourced to GPT, when you should not, and how we can develop this kind of discernment for students, even we are not, as a teacher, we are not around. So that really require a lot of self-regulation and metacognition as well. And the cultivate student agency, it is always close to my heart, and the student will not, and hopefully student get the skill that even they out of leave my class, they has to can apply this thinking, critical thinking to their own learning in the future. And ensure equitable access, how you can explicit teaching GPT skill to eliminate something called a hidden curriculum. Some students, they already know, and some students don't know, and how do you level the playground in the classroom. So this is my thinking process when you think about the course redesign. I would take two possibilities. One is that I call it more proactive, another one more reactive. Proactive always means like the future work is changing. In this case, you need to revise the learning objective, and then you also need to revise assignment and also the learning activities. In other case, you don't think you have a future work is changing, but assessment can be easy done with GPT. And in this case, you definitely also need to revisit the assessment and the learning activity as well. So in the data science case, I do think we need have everybody take a proactive approach. The future work is changing, and that's why I actually revisit the learning objective and become like less coding but more code review and debugging. And then we encourage critical thinking, push to high order task in the Bloom taxonomy, and also foster metacognition and self-regulated learning. So just to give you an idea with the course content, I don't choose randomly whether they're going to use GPT or not, and have a thinking process going on. So these two classes in fall 2023 are relative advanced, even though all the students even they probably new to data science, but they don't they do have a programming skill, so they do know how to program even though they do not specifically know how to program in data science. So they have some basic skill for them to understand even GPT's output. So this is the context and the consideration I was try to fact in when I decide whether or not and how we're going to use GPT in this class. So there's a full range of a GTP policy. In this class, I would say it's probably more like liberal. I actually asked the student to use GPT. So I integrate GPT into curriculum through the instruction usage. I myself use it. I show them how to use it, and I also teach students how to use it. And I also did discuss the best practice to use it to support learning. And the student will have a guideline to when and not how to use it, and also encouraged to discover, discern appropriate use cases, and critically engage with GPT output, and maintain transparency when produce GPT assisted work. So students have to declare whether they want whether or not they and to what extent they use GPT in the assignment. So I have a refined learning objective, and the rather thing is that what my highlight here is that in addition to develop this foundational skill, I want to then to demonstrate skill for productive usage of AI, and the long-term goal is to cultivate as a lifelong learner, because things can change so fast, and they need to learn how to learn. And I told two students that since now you know GPT, I'm going to give you a lot more challenging tasks than previous semester. So this just to give you an example, the learning activity looks like a typical session of the class. The first half, we're going to talk about method and concept. You're going to do some pre-reading. Of course, you can use GPT to generate quiz to check your answer, understanding this kind of stuff, right? And in class, we're going to do some demo and discussion. So previous class, if I don't use GPT, I stop here because I don't have time to allow students to use GPT. And so one of the complaint feedback from the student that they only know about the concept, they don't know how to use it. And now I be a bit more aggressive in push them to use GPT, and use GPT help them to write a code so that they can actually do some serious data science problem solving with a data set, and they can write a whole code and with the help of GPT do analysis and discussion and sharing as well. So some sample activities using GPT. And so this is the first lab as the analyze a data set called a data analyst. That's kind of funny, right? So the goal is to get familiar with the Python notebook, that keep in mind a student actually the first time using Python notebook, and then some basic functions from pandas. And if I were to teach this kind of stuff, and this deserve another class. But now I allow students to do GPT as an assistant and to learn this very basic stuff. And the ground rules, they allow to encourage to use GPT, but to use it creatively and critically. And I remind them again, the goal is to learn, is not to outsource the work for GPT to get the work done. And allow them to work in pair in a group, but they will have to do it themselves. So ask them to take a peek, look at the data set and check out the shape. And I actually demo this task using GPT. So I show them what the prompt should look like. And then after that, I will ask the questions, what kind of question you have for this data set, and do some data exploration, and then ask them to do some hands-on deep dive, ask them to generate the plot like this, and writing code. And then last part is the reflection. Ask about the question, what do they learn from that, and what's the reflection of using GPT? Is it useful? Is it helpful for your complete task or helpful for your learning? So there's two different questions, right? Any frustration, enjoyable sentiment, and I asked them to give me a copy of interaction log of GPT, and then some students send me like hundreds of pages of GPT chat log. Yeah. So I also it's teaching how to use GPT. Just one example, as give the prompt that tutor in-person GPT as a tutor, and then I have this code. I'm a beginner data scientist. Python, can you explain the code line by line? So this is the student help the student to learn. And this is also another example as to generate quiz question to test the understanding. Now, I'm going to spend some time, give you some, might not able to go through all of the reflection, that's a lot, and but I just hopefully I get through some of them, give you a taste of how the student reflection looks like after initial usage. So I'm going to highlight the pro and the con. They think it's good aspect of a GPT and bad aspect of GPT. So just be mindful. I hope you're not colorblind, so sorry, but I need to be mindful about that. Yeah. So one student thinks it's a very good learning companion for programming. And the student obviously is not completely new, has experience with GPT and also programming as well. I think GPT is good at assisting debugging and problem solving. And sometimes he will hit a wall. Previous without GPT, who just hit there, got stuck for error on the errors forever. But GPT is good at help to debug. I think it will allow more consistent and efficient workflow, and also give a more personalized solution. So if you go to Stack Overflow, go to Google, you search something, it's usually not very efficient because it's not targeted to your particular sample, and then you need to spend a lot more time to dig into this the right kind of explanation. But here, it becomes very personalized and specific. And the student also mentioned that it can take a new idea, and GPT will give you some idea programming, and might not be the same as you did, but it can become a brainstorming partner. And some students mentioned it could be an advanced searching and self-study tool. So like it's better than Googling Stack Overflow, and more streamlined version for self-study. And the student mentioned that they focus on big stuff, big picture, than on small repetitive stuff. This is exactly what's happening in the workforce. And And some student mentioned that it is the risk of overdependence. They think GPT is helpful for my learning. However, it should not be the only method to learn because it can lead to dependence. It'll be most effective it can use to supplement lecture and practice exercise. And some students are very cautiously experimenting GPT. This is the first time they use GPT. Like they actually compare search Google and reading the top replies and compare with what the GPT find. And in this case, he was impressed. And it's kind of very interesting that he was able to validate GPT with Google. And now students have like got stuck with GPT. It's like I got a slight frustrated with GPT has made time, I got into error, and continue to give me the same thing again and again when asked the question differently. And some students say like, it is a little bit frustrating because I really don't know how to talk to GPT, but hopefully that is a skill that I can improve. So this is like a prompt engineering, almost like a different kind of language that you need to develop by talking to GPT. And talking about debugging, the student has some frustration that doing something like that is that when you debug your own code versus debug GPT code is a bit different, right? And then they come from different um, assumptions, and the student can get stuck. And GPT is not quite useful sometimes. Some students complain that sometimes it uses overly complex model than it could be. So this is possible that because they don't have this constraint in mind, that you need to, oh, this is a beginner student, you need to give them more simple solution, that kind of stuff, right? They probably just randomly pick some solutions might not be optimal for beginner students. And sometimes they said they're yeah, pretty much useless if we don't understand how to interpret output. Helpful for learning, but not so much. Like sit on a fence. The student said, I learned how to ask a best question and see how you can use it different way, but that's about it. I did not learn how to code, and I learned to problem solve. Yeah, so that's different perspective. And something that gave a tip, how can get GPT to work for you. And so this particular example is I gave CatChat a lot of context about what you would try to do in order to answer the question correctly. But you still have to think about a problem to formulate a question. So I hope you convinced that it has become more and more important skill to ask the right question to GPT. So I'm not sure how much time I have 10 minutes. Let's quickly go through some student reflection after use GPT for a whole semester. So that would be a bit more complete understanding their view. I asked survey questions about the usefulness, usage about different tasks, data science task or learning task. Some opening question on frustration experience and positive experience and a lesson learned. And then lastly, ask the question if they are going to run a class again in the future, what are they going to do? So some data, most of the students, they use a free version of the GPT, 3.5. ChatGPT is called a ChatGPT. And so this is the data distribution of to what extent they use. You think that GPT is useful for different tasks. I separated into two category. One is this use the data science task, and the bottom are those learning task. And I compare this undergraduate class versus a graduate level class, and the green bars are very useful, moderate, orange bar, and so on and so forth. And then you see the pattern that it looks like the top task is like debugging code, run model, data wrangling, data summarization, and being popular, used, and also being student believes that have pretty useful. And then compared to the rest, like a general insights, brainstorming, draft a report, they feel less useful. And explaining concept, they use relatively more often than other tasks like a general study plan or general quiz question, even mock interview. And the graduate student explain more about the mock interview with GPT. So some frustration, and then we kind of already covered. I'm going to quickly go through inaccurate and inconsistent response. And it's very interesting. And you know that GPT has a window, right? And as some students say that it tend to forget. That's the, if you have like a long conversation that's too long and then forget what happening in the previous response and can be confusing. But some students say like, I want to get rid of that kind of misunderstanding, like a frustration, can get in the loop. But he keep come back. It's like a memory is too much. In this case, it's probably easy to solve. You just restart a chat. Yeah. And need for specific prompts, and we already talked about it. And yeah, I need to break down and use that. It's kind of very interesting that last bullet point can get stuck at some point in time. Phrase a question in homework one was apparently confusing GPT into thinking I would asking terrorism-related question. That's the GPT's words, and then GPT refused to get the question. I actually don't know what kind of prompt into that kind of conversation. That's very interesting. And students surprising good performance and how it, yeah, it's pretty eye-opening first and makes knowledge, helped in learning and improve engagement. Yeah, have experience. Yeah, ask questions. They're kind of very similar understanding, interesting experience. And sometimes put two versions of the same code and may pick one. That's probably a more recent feature of OpenAI, and ask a pick which one is more appropriate. That's kind of interesting. And also want to share when ChatGPT made an error, it could correct itself and explain why it had done something wrong in the first place. So that's the very interesting questions that experience the student have. So the lesson learned, student want to have a healthy skepticism because it can be wrong sometimes, and validate. And I really like this quote that I think future data science students should use GPT, and lesson is a powerful but imperfect tool, and be very careful, verify, especially for critical application. And learn to communicate with GPT with patience. And you might not get it correctly at the first shot, but try to not give up. And some students said it's a temperamental tool. Be direct, be concise, be specific, and I shall deliver. It's pretty funny. Be patient, be specific, yeah, and know when to use and not use GPT. So they should use GPT for learning purpose, and but not accuse for your laziness. And learn GPT to use GPT to develop some benefit, take time to digest concept. Is a tool for smart work, innovation, and foster innovation and problem solving skill. It's a tool, it's not a coach. And student also mentioned how do you explore the student GPT's knowledge by different projects, pretty much become like a brainstorming partners and product usage. Yeah, that's kind of already. So I asked a question, how you can use GPT. I don't think I have times pretty much enough time. And students summarize they have a general sentiment that it's a positive reception because recognize the value and also recognize their ethical and responsive usage, how important it is. Emphasize critical engagement. And they suggested that we want to have a course on introduction of AI literacy, ethics, privacy bias, and that's probably the reason that we have the library symposium, organize a workshop, effective use GPT, understand limitation, and prompt engineering basically. And would love to have a guest speakers from industry. How do they use GPT in their real world? I think it's very legitimate. And students also want us to reflect and monitor and adjust. And if we see that students depend on too much on GPT, we should adjust in our assignment. Inclusive and accessibility, and recognize GPT can help leveling the playing ground, but ensure that everybody have an equal access to GPT. So I want to close that. It's another topic is kind of interest. I'm not an expert, and basically the idea is that how to discriminate between this GPT work or not GPT work. And it's kind of funny quote from this. If you see a lot of dev, that's more likely to GPT. But in my case, I found that students do use GPT to generate the report, which they shouldn't. And if they do that, I tend to think this analysis is very, very boring. It's very generic, not specific data sets, and they're likely to output in the text, not in the table. I really lack the coherence. Probably do a lot of pumping here and there, but they don't know how to put together in a coherent story. So that's a very bad work. They just use GPT, doesn't take a lot of thinking, and of course the student generate that kind of report will not get good grades. So my conclusion is that I feel like a student do demonstrate a mature and cautious and critical perspective using GPT in our data science class, even without me explicitly tell them how to use GPT. And students derive a lot of wisdom through spending many, many hours working in GPT. And it's kind of like a learning by doing. And somebody said you need to spend at least 10 hours working with GPT only to get these insights. I would say students spend more than 10 hours in their throughout the semester. And they learn a lot. And I want to close, say, just a little bit with my thoughts on what is an important skill in the area of AI in terms of data science, and then maybe in general to other fields too. Really know how to evaluate and debug AI's work, and know how to decompose the problem into the small problem. So to the point that you can ask a specific question to GPT, and also develop an intuitive understanding of what AI is good at and not good at, aiming for productive human AI collaboration. Treat it as an imperfect interns, right? And still learning. Adapt to the changing landscape of work, learn how to learn, adapt quickly, and pay attention to this, we call it transfer of skills, so such as communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and ethical reasoning. So that's it. Very quick, and I'd like to have the opportunity to hear your thoughts and questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chen. Really appreciate it. Feel free to unmute or put into chat if you have questions for Dr. Chen at this time.
Yeah,
There is a very long question. Do you see that question, Dr. Chen?
I see the question. I also have another question sent by Brian. Is Brian still around? Maybe you can talk louder. You sent me privately. uh,
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt earlier. I just wanted to ask about the idea of some of the GPT models growing laziness. And
mm,
I wanted to know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that. Sometimes the communication is okay. It's that the model does not follow instructions or has its own ideas.
yeah. I do heard that kind of. I personally, I don't have a lot of experience with that, and I do feel like if from writing point of view, and they tend to have a bit lower quality for whatever reason. Yeah, Brian, do you have any experience of this kind of phenomenon,
Oh
lazy
no,
and
I just noticed that in ChatGPT there's like if you rate it poorly, it'll ask, am I being lazy? Am I not following instructions? Like it's a
Oh,
part of
I
their
see.
immediate feedback loop now.
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't know that. That's probably like more recent version GPT. Oh, it's anecdotal. It's like funny. Somebody actually, I forgot who actually did it, which is a study actually legitimate or not. Is that it's depends on which season you're using GPT. If it's around like a Christmas time, GPT is a bit more laid back. If it's like at the springtime, like a May, and it's a bit more diligent. I don't know if it's if it's true, but I'm not sure. It's really anecdotal. Okay, so let's talk about, yes. So I have another question. Pervasive present education GPT's debugging code have raised concern that it potential impact student learning process. They were debating on whether reliance GPT AI tool might hinder development critical thinking skill as students become less inclined to independent analyze troubleshooting errors in their work. What's the perspective on this issue? Yeah, so thank you for this question. I think it's a very important the discernment when you allow you to use GPT, when you don't, and really have to go back to your learning objective. Your learning objective is to teach a student debugging skill. Then you probably want to design the assignment that you allow students to debug themselves, and then they can compare GPT's debugging answer and then see whether, because treat GPT as your teaching fellow, and give you a personalized feedback, and that probably would be better set up than rather than like in my cases, I send off a student GPT and GPT just they debug it. And then in my case, I want to really focus on the time to understand the data, analyze the data rather than writing the code. Yeah. Any other questions? Any comments and thoughts and funny things to share about your experience with GPT?
Yes, go ahead, John.
Hi, Karen. I may have missed it, but at the beginning, you talked about IS 296
Mhm.
as typically having students who haven't had a lot of data analysis background or skills. I'm curious, did they bring statistical skill?
Yeah, in this class we do it's a 2R. One is about the stats reasoning, statistical reasoning, another is programming. We actually combine these two together. We teach programming in the context of running simulation to really understand the data generation process and random sampling, all this kind of statistical concept. Yeah, we do.
It sounded like from the little feedback that you got from students that maybe they found it was more useful for descriptive analysis.
Oh, John, sorry, this is my fault that I mixed all the things together. Actually, 296 is not a class I use GPT. So this is a beginner class.
I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah.
428 is a class that the student already has some background of programming. They actually, these are the class I use as
Okay.
allow them to
All right.
use GPT. But the 296, I do not allow them to use GPT. Yeah. Yeah, but you asked the question whether you think they think it's more useful to. I think you talk about this plot, right? Sorry.
Well, just, for folks who might be intimidated by data analysis,
Mhm.
can GPT be trusted for a basic descriptive analysis of a data set to maybe help jumpstart
Yes, yes.
more of an inferential or exploratory analysis?
Yes, that's right. So these are tasks like a ROM, not ROM model. Model is more like inferential. Data wrangling, data summarization, data visualization
Yeah.
are those distributed tasks. That's right. Yeah. To jumpstart, yes, I do think it's a good thing. But at least you need to once they generate the results, at least you need to check they actually generate the right kind of plot or not. I have to tell you a story that students notice sometimes GPT generated plot, it just does not make sense. And they have to ask him to generate different visualization, especially have a multi-dimensional data set, like have a lot of different column, and he would just randomly pick some column and give you some plots. It's just a little bit mess. So we need to be a little bit persistent to ask the question. If it doesn't work, and it can be another plot and see if it works. But I do think it's kind of remove the barrier to writing a code to generate the plot. It's kind of like a Tableau, right? Tableau, you don't need to write a single piece of code, but you have to pay the money. But here, you just outsource it to GPT. Like, I want to generate the plot, and can you write a code to help to generate the plot, right? The more you specify the plot is, and the more likely give you the things that you want. Yeah. Just example that I gave you to not for this two class, but for the 296. As I mentioned that I don't use GPT, don't allow student GPT use GPT in that class, but I do in one of the class activity, I asked them to generate plot themselves and then compare what the GPT generate and then compare it. And then at that time they already know what is right, what is wrong, and then they kind of assess what the GPT's work is. So at the end of the day, it's always human should be in control of whatever GPT output is. But it definitely is a good idea to use GPT jumpstart your analysis.
Any other questions? Last call, going once, going twice. Okay. Well, Well, thank you so much, Karen, for being here today, to presenting on this. I've really learned a lot. Thank you for opening up with what is GPT. I feel like I pushed that in the back of my brain months ago. And thank you for citing your sources. As a librarian, I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me.
Oh,
Um, Thank you all for being here today. Please join us for next week's talk with UMD's web librarian, Amy Swakhammer, who will be talking about protecting your data privacy.
thank you for organizing, and it's such a pleasure
Yes.
to be here with you. And